Good evening and welcome to the first meeting of 2022 for the West School Board. We'll call the meeting to order, and our first item on the agenda is always the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'll all stand with us and join us in the pledge. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You know, in June, when we all do like 14 graduations, the deal for new trustees is to see who gets to start the clap. So when it comes to the first start of the meeting, it's whoever gets to say, "I pledge" on the pledge, and see who can beat each other to the start of the pledge. All right, so we have an amended agenda tonight, and so first item on the agenda is that we need to approve the amended agenda, which, just for everybody's edification, we have added an executive session. Something came from the administration that needed an executive session, and so that's the change on the agenda. So with that, I would ask for a motion to approve the amended agenda.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the amended agenda.
Is there a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second that.
I'll second.
Oh, okay. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the amended agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Motion carries 5-0. All right. So next item up, and this will be fun. I like this part. So we get to swear in our newly elected trustees, and I get the honor of doing that tonight. Now, they tell me that you have to actually get up and go down to the microphone because they want you on video and they want you to say it over that. So, and I have to stay here. But so I'm just going to go in zone order because I think that's probably easiest. So, Trustee Frazier, if you'll go first. And for family, if you guys want to get up, take pictures, move around the room, please feel free to do so. Like totally informal, and want you to get as many pictures of this as possible. All right. So, Trustee Frazier, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Lori Frazier,
Swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Idaho,
and the Constitution of the State of Idaho,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the Office of Trustee of West Ada School District in Ada and Canyon Counties,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of Office of the Trustee of Joint School District 2 in Ada and Canyon Counties,
in the State of Idaho, according to the best of my abilities.
in the State of Idaho, according to the best of my abilities.
Thank you. And you're sworn in. Nikki, she's signing the code, right? Okay. Just for audience purposes, after a trustee's sworn in, they sign the code of ethics, and all of us trustees sign that every year. So she signs in, and then we'll sign all that a little bit later, and we'll go through that as well. So, all right. Trustee Redford. The language on my sheet's a little bit different than what's on the screen, so yeah, so I'll read off the screen this time. Trustee Redford, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Angie Redford,
Swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Idaho,
and the Constitution of the State of Idaho,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the Office of Trustee of Joint School District Number 2
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the Office of Trustee of Joint School District 2
in Ada and Canyon Counties, State of Idaho, according to the best of my abilities.
in Ada and Canyon Counties, State of Idaho, according to the best of my abilities.
All right. Congratulations. All right, we'll move on to the next item of the agenda, which is the reorganization of the Board of Trustees. And from here, we will appoint a clerk of the board, and then the clerk of the board will take over for the nominations for the offices. Well, for the chair, and then once the chair is elected, the chair will take over from there. So with that, I would open it up for appointment of the clerk of the board. Trustee Kofelt.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we appoint Nicole Shephers as the board clerk.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? By the way, nominations do not require a second, just so you all know. So is there any discussion? Well, I can't help but say at least I'm certainly really glad to have Ms. Shephers as our clerk. So looking forward to 2022 with her in the loop. So she's been great. With that, we'll call, oh, go ahead, Trustee Redford.
I was just going to say how much I really appreciated Nikki and her warm and professional and friendly, onboarding process with us. She's been so great to work with. She's a great representative for West Ada, and I would be disappointed if she did not continue with us. She's great.
That's great. Thank you. All right. Is there any other discussion? All right. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 The chair votes aye. Motion carries 5-0. All right. Clerk Shephers, you're up.
Okay. The first item of business in the reorganization of the West Ada Board of Trustees is the election of board chair. I will call for a nomination and then allow for a discussion and a vote. At this time, I will open the floor for the nomination of board chair with the reminder that nominations do not require a second. Is there a nomination?
Clerk Shephers.
Trustee
With a nomination.
Johnson?
Thank you. All right. Tonight, I get the privilege of nominating one of the best individuals I've ever met in my life. Trustee Ozuna has served on the West Ada School Board for 6 years. She has demonstrated over all of those years with her votes and her public comments that her one true motivation is doing what's best for kids, staff, and families in our district. She not only serves on this board, she has served on booster boards, volunteered in classrooms, made mac and cheese a ton of times for Centennial High kids. Her house is where all the kids hang out because she and her husband are truly parents that support all of our kids. Renee embodies what each and every one of us should strive to be as a board member: nonpartisan, supportive and collaborative, willing to listen to all stakeholders, and seek to understand every perspective before making a decision. She's always treating others with respect and a true public servant, not in it for any other reason than her love of kids. It is for all these reasons that tonight I nominate Trustee Renee Ozuna for chair of the West Ada School Board, and I'll save the rest of my thoughts for discussion.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Johnson. At this time, do we have any discussion? Trustee Frazier?
Yes, I have to just say I think Trustee Ozuna is a fabulous individual. She's been really welcoming to me. I appreciate the time she spent with me. At this time, I would say that I don't think she's the right choice for chair. I think that the public has made their desires quite known in the last election, and they would really like to see change. And while I think she is an asset to the board, I don't feel like this is the right position for her at this time.
Is there any other discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from the other two trustees on their thoughts.
I echo what Trustee Frazier has already said. I don't have much to add other than I agree Renee, or Trustee Ozuna has, she's been great. I've met with her. I'm excited to work with her. I think that the results of the last election, citizens and parents sent a pretty bold message that they'd like to see a different direction. So at this time, I don't support Renee as the chair. I'm sorry, Trustee Ozuna.
Thank you. Trustee Kofelt?
Yeah, thank you, Clerk Shephers. Yeah, I can't disagree with anything that Trustee Johnson had stated. My year since joining the board, Trustee Ozuna has, as my colleagues have said, has been welcoming, has been a wealth of knowledge and support at times, and even though we've come down differently at times on different votes, she is a wonderful person, and I think her being on the board is a good thing. For the reasons that some of my colleagues have stated, and looking at my zone and trying to represent what I believe the consensus through which, if you can ever get that, through this community, I just don't believe that Renee is a right person at this time for that position. So.
Clerk Shepherd. Thanks. I wanted to hear all that because I wanted to put a couple things out for consideration. First of all, I think when we look at the last election, there was about 12,000 votes in it total, but we represent 100,000 people between the 5 of us. So that's a pretty small percentage of the total population when it comes to the percentage of people that voted in that election. That those votes don't count. I don't want to say that because I do think they count. The other piece of this, and I think this is something for consideration, and I hate to be the person to say it because I think it's probably best said by my colleague to the left of me, but I think we have a couple things going on in this board. First of all, we have 2 new members, which I appreciate the newness. I also think that as having had this experience is a good time to learn, and being in a chair position when you're brand new is probably not the best for anybody in the district, including the new member. So that leaves the gentleman to my left, if it's not Trustee Ozuna, because I certainly am done being chair. And you know, the gentleman to my left has shared that he does not believe he will make he will make it through this year on this board potentially. And for those reasons, I'd ask my fellow colleagues and trustees to consider the fact that stability is what's really important in a time like this. And there are more than 12,000 people in this district that we all represent. And so I would look to you, I know this is the first tough vote, but I would look to you to think and consider those things besides just the folks that voted for you in the election, because we represent everybody when we come up on this board, and our code of ethics says that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I will open the vote for Trustee Ozuna as the selection for board chair. I will do so individually via roll call. Trustee Frazier?
Nay.
Trustee Redford?
Nay.
Trustee Kofelt?
Nay.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Okay, let it be known that the vote is 3 against, 1 in favor. The motion does not pass. At this time, I will ask if there are... Oh, Trustee Ozuna, I'm sorry. Can she hear me?
All right, thank you. Aye.
Okay. My apologies. At this point, let it be known that the vote is 3 against, 2 in favor. The motion does not pass. I will ask if there are any other nominations for the election of board chair. Trustee Frazier?
Thank you. I would like to nominate Trustee Kofel as chair. My reason for doing that is twofold. One, I think Trustee Johnson said it quite well. I think it's important that we have someone that has some experience. And I think the last year that he's been on the board at such a tumultuous time, he's definitely had opportunity to learn quite a bit. I also appreciate, as I do Trustee Ozuna, the support that he's shown to us. And again, just to restate what I said before, I think he represents a good part of the community. And while I respect and appreciate your view, Trustee Johnson, on the representation in the vote, I do believe that Trustee Kofelt could represent the district quite well. So he would be my recommendation.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I will ask if we have any discussion regarding Trustee Kofelt as the election for board chair. Trustee Kofelt.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to follow up and comment on what Trustee Johnson had said. As I was preparing for this meeting, I communicated to each member, each of my colleagues on this board, including the new trustees sworn in this evening, and Dr. Bubb. It was important to me that as they made their vote, that they had all the information. It is the reality that between probably by the end of the summer, I will have to step down from the board. I have some aging parents that are going to need me to commit all of my time to taking care of them. So I say that tonight because I do think it's important for everybody to know the entire picture as we make some votes this evening. With that said, I am ready to fulfill the position of chairperson. I believe I can be effective in that role and continue the mission that this board has had of providing the best education that we can for our children. And so with that, I'm done.
Is there any more, Trustee Redford?
I just want to express my appreciation to Trustee Kofelt for his transparency and being open and upfront about his situation. That doesn't sway me against him. I would love to see him, and I would support him as chair. I really love the energy that you bring, your positive. I don't know, just your positive vibe, your experience, your desire to serve, and I would love to keep you on as long as we can, and as long as you're able and willing to serve.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Trustee Ozuna, did you? Go ahead.
Thanks. Trustee Coldfeld's been an incredible addition to the West Ada Board, and I appreciate his thoughtfulness and insight. I think he'd be an outstanding board chair, but with his upcoming move, I can't give him my support tonight. I think this would be disruptive and not what's best for West Ada.
Thank you, Trustee Ozuna. Is there any further discussion? Trustee Johnson?
Yeah, I feel the same way as Trustee Ozuna. I'm really glad for the transparency, and I think that helps when folks are trying to make a decision. And at the same time, and I shared this, I just believe that stability in the times that we're in is a critical piece. You know, if we had experience and stability together, that would be my ultimate. And unfortunately, we're not going to get that. And so for that reason, I cannot support the motion.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Okay. Seeing none, I will open the vote for Trustee Kofelt as the selection for board chair for 2022. Trustee Frazier?
Aye.
Trustee Redford?
Aye.
Trustee Ozuna dropped off the phone call, so Mr. Stevens is going to call her back really quick.
Thank you for dialing me back in. I meant to go on mute and hit the wrong button.
That's okay.
Very unfortunate timing.
That's
So
okay.
sorry.
So we're taking votes. Trustee Frazier was an aye. Trustee Redford was an aye. Did you want to say your vote, Trustee Ozuna, for Trustee Kofelt as 2022 chair?
Trustee Kofelt, I'm sorry, but it's a nay.
Thank you. Trustee Johnson
Same, nay.
and Trustee Kofelt?
Aye.
Okay, the vote is 3 in favor, 2 against. The motion passes. Congratulations, Trustee Kofelt, and I will turn the meeting over to you.
Okay, thank you. So the next up item on the agenda is the election of our vice chair. And with that, I will open the floor to nominations. Trustee Redford.
I'd like to nominate Trustee Frazier to the position of vice chair. I think between you, we have the experience, and then we have a fresh face with Trustee Frazier. Again, going back to just the results of the last election and the outpouring of support and messaging and all of that, it's clear that they would the people would like to see one of the new members take that seat, and I think Trustee Frazier would do a phenomenal job as vice chair.
Any other comments regarding the? Oh, I thought you were pointing to there. Yes, Trustee Ozuna, any comment regarding the nomination of Trustee Frazier?
Thank you, Chairman Kofelt. Trustee Frazier, please know that this isn't personal, but I can't give you my vote tonight. I believe some experience is best before moving into a board leadership position, especially given Chairman Kofelt's upcoming move. If the votes go in your favor, please also know that I'm here to continue to support West Ada and what's best for our students.
Thank
you, Trustee Ozuna. Any other comments?
Chair Kofelt. I echo the same thing as Trustee Ozuna. I think at the end of the day, you know, everybody does a good job when we all work together. But I also believe and have experienced lack of experience in the situations, and just based on that, I just can't support somebody brand new. Thank you.
I'll just make a couple comments here, and I am supportive of that motion, and the reason I'm supportive of it is I do believe that elections matter, and it's important for me, since I've been here, I've done my best to represent my district, and so I think it's important to be, to recognize the election that just occurred, and I think it's important to have Lori sit on the board and be a representative of those votes. On top of that, I think she comes with a very good background of involvement, and I think she'll do a fantastic job. So.
Yeah, Chairman, if I may, I really appreciate that nomination, Trustee Redford, and the support. I respect very much, Trustee Johnson, your feelings on that, and Trustee Azuna. I also want to say that in representing the vice chair position, I think what's important is that we continue to put kids first. It's important that we listen to the constituency as a whole, which is my goal. It is my motivation, and it is why I ran. And that will happen across the entire district. And as many people know that have already reached out to me by email, I will continue to talk one by one and listen to everyone's input and contribute to the board in that way.
Okay, unless there's any other comment, Madam Clerk, can we do a roll call vote?
Would you like me to do it?
Okay, first mistake. I guess I do the roll call vote.
You can do it.
I knew that. I was testing the clerk, so thank you. Okay, Trustee Frazier.
Aye.
Trustee Redford.
Aye.
Trustee Ozuna.
Nay.
Trustee Johnson.
Nay.
And the board votes aye, so motion passes on a 3-2, and congratulations. I would like to, before we move on to the other items, so I would like to, one is I think this sort of dialogue is important. I think it's important for people to see representative government, and I think it's important for people to feel like they're heard. And so these sort of discussions and things, I appreciate them, and I hope you do. And with that said, I'd also like to give my appreciation to Trustee Johnson and to Trustee Ozuna. When I came onto the board, they were leading during a very, very difficult time. And they are continuing to lead as we work our way through the challenges that face us today and the challenges that we may not even know that are coming. So I just want to say I appreciate the leadership that you gave to this board. I appreciate the time you gave to this board, and I appreciate Trustee Ozuna. I know you're not able to see me here, but this is for both of you. I appreciate the time that you've given to this district and are continuing to give to it, so thank you for your service. Okay, next item on the agenda is the approval of the 2022 West Ada Board appointments. And so I will entertain a motion for the recommended appointments.
Chair Kofelt, for a motion.
Trustee Johnson.
I would move that we approve the 2022 West Ada Board appointments as recommended. I believe they're up on the screen, so it's a motion.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the recommendation of staff for the 2022 West Ada Board. Do I have a second?
Chairman, I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. We have a second with Trustee Frazier. Any discussion?
These guys have been doing it for years. I think we can keep going with it.
Okay, seeing none. Does this need to be a roll call vote also? No, it does not. Okay. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Board votes aye. Motion passes 5-0. Next item is our school board meeting resolution that will establish our monthly school board meeting dates for 2022. And those should be up on the board here, and I know that the trustees have had a chance to see those also. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the calendar. Trustee Frazier.
Chairman, I make a motion to approve the calendar for the school board meeting calendar, I guess, for 2022.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the calendar for school board meetings for 2022. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second from Trustee Redford. And is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Nope. Board votes yes, and motion passes 5-0. Next item up is designation of our public places for posting notices. And you'll see those up on the overhead right now. If there's entertain a motion to approve these posting locations.
Chair Kofelt.
Yes. Trustee Johnson.
I would move that we approve the posting notices, or the posting notices as designated.
Okay. We have a motion to approve the posting locations as identified. Do we have a second? Trustee Frazier.
Chairman, I second that.
Okay. We have a first and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I do want to call something out for the public because we changed this up a little bit since last time around. And we've taken off some of the local government postings and added in the website and the Facebook. I think just based on the conversation that actually we thought would create more public notice than in the past. So I think that's a great change and recommendation from the staff. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Trustee Johnson. Yeah. Any other comments? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Board votes aye. Motion passes 5-0. Our next item on the agenda is the West Ada School District Spotlight. And Dr. Bubb?
I think we have to sign our code of ethics. It's next on the agenda.
Is that on there?
Yeah.
We do. Thank you. Prior to moving to that, we do need to, the rest of us that have not signed it, we need to review and sign the Code of Ethics for the remaining board members. And correct me, is Trustee Ozuna have a copy of this, and then has she already signed it, or will it?
I do have a copy. Thank you. Sign it when I am back in.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Kofelt, just a point of order. Typically in the past, we have actually had trustees rotate through reading this code of ethics and then signing it so that the public hears us all speak through it and say it and sign it, sort of like a second oath. So.
No, I think that sounds reasonable, and I'm just trying to find my copy here.
Oh.
There it is. I got it. Okay. So what we'll do, and I think that's a good practice, and thank you. What we'll do is we'll just kind of rotate through and take each one. We'll go down the line here, and then after Trustee Frazier, Trustee Ozuna, if you can read the next one in line there. So, Trustee Johnson.
So as a member of my local Board of Trustees, I will strive to improve public education, and to that end, I will attend all scheduled regular and special board meetings insofar as possible, having read my packet, ensuring that I am informed about the issues to be considered at the meeting. Understand a vacancy may be declared if I fail to attend 4 consecutive regular meetings without an acceptable excuse of the Board of Trustees.
Thank you. The second code of ethic, recognize that the board must comply with the open meeting law and only has authority to make decisions at official board meetings. Trustee Redford.
Make all decisions based on the available facts and my independent judgment and refuse to surrender that judgment to individuals or special interest groups.
Trustee Frazier.
4, understand that the board makes decisions as a team. Individual board members may not commit the board to any action unless so authorized by official board action.
Trustee Ozuna.
Recognize that decisions are made by a majority vote and the outcome should be supported by all board members.
Acknowledge that policy decisions are a primary function of the board and should be made after full discussion in publicly held board meetings, recognizing that authority to administer policy rests with the superintendent.
Be open, fair, and honest, have no hidden agendas, and respect the right of other board members to have differing opinions and ideas from mine.
Recognize that the superintendent is the board's advisor and should be present at all meetings, except when the board is considering the superintendent's evaluation, contract, or salary.
9, understand the chain of command and refer problems or complaints to the proper administrative office while refraining from communications that may create conditions of bias should a district concern ever arise to the attention of the board as a hearing panel.
Trustee Ozuna.
Keep abreast of important developments in educational trends, research, and practices by individual study and through participation in programs providing such information. thorough participation.
Number 11, respect the right of the public to be informed about the district's decisions and school operations.
Number 12, understand that I will receive information that is confidential and cannot be shared.
13, give staff the respect and consideration due skilled professional employees and support the employment of those best qualified to serve as district staff, while insisting on regular and impartial evaluation of all staff.
14, present criticism of district personnel as opposed to criticism of district policy, practice, or procedures to the superintendent, not to district staff or during a board meeting.
Trustee Ozuna.
Refuse to use my board position for personal or family gain prestige. I will announce any conflicts of interest before board action is taken.
You want number 16 or you want me to take it? Remember always that my first and greatest concern must be the educational welfare of the students attending public schools.
Okay. Thank you for that reminder too on reading that. I think that is important for not only for folks to read it that are here, but folks to hear it because they're important ethics for us to follow. So with that, I know you've already signed yours. We'll sign ours and then we'll move on. And now we get to move on to a very special spotlight tonight. So, Dr. Bubb.
Chairman Kofeld, thank you very much. It's an honor to be able to address some of the individuals that we're going to highlight tonight. Yesterday was National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. Across the country on this day, citizens take the lead in honoring and showing the support for those who protect and serve. West Ada works closely with the Ada County Sheriff's Department, Boise Police Department, and Meridian Police Department, and truly appreciates each law enforcement officer that puts their life on the line every single day for our community. We have a short video from our communications team to highlight just one of the valued members of the resource team. Officer, and I'm sure I'm going to mess this up, Officer Jared Hostvite, yes, from Victory Middle School.
Middle school is kind of that sweet spot age where you can, they're still willing to listen to you a little bit. They don't know everything yet, right? Sure. So I like that age. Service opportunities come up all the time. It could be as simple as opening a locker. Sure. I mean, that's stressful for a student on the first day of school. Right. They have, instead of one class like in grade school, they now have 6, and they have a schedule, and stuff that you don't think about. But it is it's a stressor.
Sure, little things are big things.
Little things are big things. Parents don't realize how much of a problem this is. As much of a help the phone can be, and as much as everybody enjoys it, including myself, there's certainly a level of responsibility that comes with having it. I just got off the phone with a parent whose 9-year-old was receiving threatening messages, and they had access to social media accounts and had given their number to unknown individuals, and were receiving some unpleasant messages back. And I told the parent that 9 years of age, to have a cell phone and uncontrolled access is probably not ideal. A lot of people, they're like, "Are you still a cop? Or are you a teacher? Or what are you?" And we're certainly, I have to wear all this junk, right? We are definitely still policemen, but it's just in a different niche. So, but I think having the the platform to influence our young people and make a positive impact and serve them, there's nothing better.
Thank you to our communications team for putting that video together. This evening, we'd like to acknowledge each public agency and the school resource officers throughout West Ada, as well as law enforcement officers for their service. I'd like to invite the spokesperson from each agency to share for just a minute. We will begin with Ada County Sheriff's Office, Officer Shannon Garza. She will be speaking on behalf of their agency.
My name is Shannon Garza. I am a school resource officer with Ada County Sheriffs, and I currently work out of Lake Hazel Middle School with the West Ada School District. I'm here on behalf of my agency tonight to just talk about how important our relationship is with the West Ada School District. We have worked with the district for a number of years. We hope to continue that collaboration in the future, and I know we will. The school resource officer has a really special position in our schools. I know, especially in our climate, there's been a lot of questions across the country about the value that SROs bring and add to a school. And having been one for about 5 years now, I can tell you that you can't put a price on it. We build relationships with our students, we build relationships with our staff, with our community, and I mean, we do what we do because we love it. We not only act as law enforcement officers, but we act as informal mentors. I've worked with staff, I've worked with parents, I've worked with kids on issues ranging from pure conflict to internet safety to how do I get my kid out of bed in the morning and how do I get them to go to school and be excited about it. We work as educators, we get in the classrooms. I've been lucky enough to be able to go speak at a couple parent education nights for some of my elementary schools. And even if just one parent shows up, that is time well spent in my eyes because it's just getting that information and that messaging out to the public. So we really value our position with you guys. We really love what we do, and it's just a fun job. It really is. It's like the best job in the world, so I'm very happy to be here tonight to speak on behalf of my agency. So thank you guys.
Chair Kofelt, I want to acknowledge, if you haven't followed Officer Garza's Facebook posts and you're a parent, you should get on there whether you have kids at Lake Hazel Middle or not. It's very helpful, and I follow them all the time, and I appreciate your service. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
What my plan was, if anyone would like to speak in between, but what my plan was is after each of the spokes individuals for the various agencies is to open it up if any trustees would like to make a comment. But if you would like to do it individually, I'm fine with that too. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Next up from Meridian Police Department, we have John Gonzalez.
Trustees and Dr. Bub, thanks for having us here tonight. Shannon already covered a lot of what SROs do, but we, just like she talked about, we value our partnership with West Ada School District. Not only is it the school safety components that we're working on, but also those relationships with young people within the schools. And I'm just fortunate to have a dedicated team that works with these young people and are stationed in our schools to be able to be a resource and to have that great partnership between the Meridian Police Department and West Ada School District. So we're fortunate to live in a great community where people support schools, but they also support our police, and we appreciate that, and we appreciate you having us here tonight.
I will just say on a personal note, in my role as a principal and serving at different schools, I've been able to work with each department in unique situations. And I want to say from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate everything you guys do for us every single day. Thank you for the sacrifices you make. You guys are more than just officers in our schools. You're mentors to our kids, and that was already said. Law enforcement officers are a critical part of our lives, and they're a critical part of our country. They keep our neighborhoods safe and help ensure whatever we need to do, that we can do it with in a safe atmosphere. I want to thank you from the bottom of our heart on behalf of West Ada. Thank you for everything you guys do for our kids.
Okay, I'd like to just take the opportunity now to allow any of the trustees that would like to add comments to these fine professionals that we partner with.
I just had a
Trustee
quick
Frazier.
comment. There were several years ago, I was at Rocky Mountain, and there was a false alarm that occurred, but we didn't know that. When it came, I was actually there with Dave Moser and several other individuals, and it did cause a lockdown, and it took a little over an hour to get it cleared up, and I was beyond impressed with the way things went. I felt comfortable. I had a daughter at that school at the time, and sitting in the principal's office when that began, and his obvious surprise that was happening, that this wasn't a planned drill, really showed me what that might be like and what that could be like if that was the real thing. And I just want to thank you. It was a good experience for me to see exactly what that could look like and the level of training and what you've gone through and the safety you provide our kids. Thank you so much.
Trustee Johnson.
Thank you. You know, one of the things that I think that is the first experience that kids have is with all of you, right, with law enforcement in that way. And it's a positive experience. And so that creates a different mentality about law enforcement and police and following rules and discipline. And so I appreciate that. But I also want to kind of highlight some fun. And I don't know if I can call you Mutt and Jeff right now, but I sat at a Rocky Mountain football game with Officer Rodriguez and Officer, I'm going to mess up the last name, Hasfight? Yeah, Hasfight. And they were awesome. They were playing with the kids. We were having fun. They knew every player it was Rocky and Mountain View. And Officer Rodriguez showed me some pictures of some things he had done to make it fun for the kids that day. And I just appreciate that that's the kind of experience our kids have with law enforcement because it makes them respect it and value it. And that's what our country is based on. So thank you.
Trustee Redford.
I was just thinking about the SRO that, at Boise High when I was growing up, and I still remember him, and he was such a great example to all of the students. We all had a positive, attitude about him, and he really influenced a lot of kids for good, and I appreciate that positive influence. I appreciate all that you do to serve our kids and our communities and keep us safe. I appreciate your families for supporting you. I think it's important to acknowledge your families. And I want to thank Dr. Bubb for adding this spotlight to the meetings. This is the highlight for me, seeing the spotlight and showing appreciation for all the great people in our community that make this a great place to live and why so many people want to move here. And you play a huge role in that. So thank you for all that you do.
Trustee Ozuna.
Thank you. In addition to all of the work that you do with our kids and for our kids every day, I'm so grateful for that. But I want to thank you for your support at our board meetings when we've needed it over the last couple years. I really just appreciate your. Thank you.
And I'll just close out the comments. I've being in the fire service for 33 years, which is where I spent my career. I had the fortune and the blessing to work closely with our law enforcement partners. I stayed out of trouble in school most of the time, so I really didn't need the SROs. But no, I do. I appreciate what each of you do every single day in not only keeping our kids safe, mentoring them, keeping our community safe, and many times the efforts you do go unthanked. So I really do appreciate it, and thank you for the service you give to this community. Thank you. Dr. Bubb, if it would be possible, I'd love to have just the whole board go down front and the staff and get a picture with the whole group. Okay.
standing on a chair.
Yeah, we might have to.
Can you guys scooch in? As much as possible. Yeah, Rusty, you should be good, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, if you turn your body sideways, that helps.
Dr. Bob, can you come on this end? Perfect. And then, if you want to look at me, ready? 1, 2, 3. And then look at Miss Jackson. Perfect. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is our superintendent's update.
Chairman Kofelt, trustees, I'd like to start out with just welcome everybody back. We're excited to be back. We brought as much snow as we could that first week to challenge us just a little bit. And I want to express my appreciation for everybody spending the evening with us, and I'm sure nobody's watching the football game that I've been reminded was tonight as well. So the first thing I'd like to highlight, this last Saturday marked the first Saturday math symposium. And I think the biggest piece of this, I'll give you a little background on what this is. We've arranged over 10 weekends, over 10 Saturdays throughout the rest of this year and then beginning of next year to work with our K-12 educators on math instruction. We're bringing in some experts from around the United States to come in and work with our teachers. I think it's an opportunity for our teachers, but when we first, I gave this to our math department, and I asked them to kind of look into this. How many teachers will we get? I really hoped to get that magic number of 50, maybe get one per school. We had 93 people that volunteered to be part of this. And so I'm extremely excited that our teachers are just always willing to challenge themselves, that are willing to come in here on a Saturday. I had the unique honor to be here with them this last Saturday for a little bit. And I've gotten great feedback on that opportunity, and I think it's really going to change the way we teach math in our classrooms every single day, from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. And we've been able to break those up a little bit, so secondary really gets secondary focus. Our elementary teachers really get an elementary focus, with the hope that then they can bring that back to the classrooms. What I asked our teachers to think about is that I didn't want them to change everything overnight. This wasn't supposed to be this extra burden on everything that they do in the classroom every day, but take away a couple things that can change their classroom. And over 10 sessions over the next year, it's going to change who they are in the classroom, and I think we're going to see really, really noticeable results. The second thing that I will say, in just a short week here, I had the unique opportunity to go check out the Stinky Sneaker. Congratulations to both teams. It was just an electric. It was what high school is all about. As I sat there and I looked around, kids being in the gym, excited. It's a beautiful facility. I would encourage anybody to get over there and see the new facility. Meridian now has a nice arts facility there. It was a great opening to that, a great event, and just really filled me with pride to be able to see our kids kind of in their element. I will say, obviously, we're watching COVID-19 numbers on a regular basis. I'm going to highlight some of our district personnel who have worked really hard to provide the access as we hear about people not having access to tests and things like that. Jonathan has worked really, really hard with Tracy Gardner and their team to make sure that we have those availabilities, working with our health partners. And more than anything, we sent out a message today. We just, when kids are sick, we want to keep them home until they're ready to go back. And the last thing I would do is say I would like to celebrate our custodial who continue to implement sanitization procedures in the classroom so our kids can stay in school.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Any trustee comments? Trustee Ozuna?
No comments, thank
Okay, thank you. Next item is we'll move into our discussion phase of the agenda. And so first up is I'd like to welcome Amy White. I think this is the first board meeting, or at least, yeah, that we were lucky enough to have her come on staff with the district here, which is really needed. And so we're glad to have you here. And so we're going to put her to work right away. And she's going to give us a little orientation on the open meeting law and board protocols so that we make sure we're doing our business correctly. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you. If I might approach, I have some. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and trustees and Dr. Bubb. You are correct, my first meeting, and it was my first full day. And your administrators had me in every corner of this building talking to, I think, every single department today. So it was an interesting and exciting first day. But what I've been asked to talk to you today about is open meeting law. And it's my understanding that the clerk has provided you with the open meeting handbook. You all have a blue handbook up there from the Idaho Attorney General's office. And once you've had the time to read that and review it, I have no doubt we will spend more time discussing, training, digesting. But I was asked tonight to touch upon some highlights, some general issues, some practical applications, as well as a number of unique situations that are special for school districts. And they're typically not addressed in the Attorney General handbook or when the Attorney General does training on open meeting, because they're training for all governmental entities. And school districts have a few unique things that we're going to touch upon tonight. So the first document I have for you is just a statement out of Idaho Code 74201. And it discusses that the formulation of public policy is to be done at open meetings. And the exact language is: the people of the state of Idaho, in creating the instruments of government that they serve, do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies so created. Therefore, the legislature finds and declares that it is the policy of the state that the formation of public policy is public business and shall not be conducted in secret. In all honesty, if you remember that in everything you do, you are highly unlikely to run afoul, unless some of the hyper-technical issues of open meeting laws. But I've always loved the intent statement in the commencement of the open meeting law about the fact that we are doing the people's business. So therefore, it is to be an open, and the public is to have full knowledge and full access to that. The second page, I've provided you with three fundamental definitions that are critical to the open meeting law. The first one is decisions. The decisions are clearly the formulation of public policy. So it discusses that any determination that you as a board make needs to be an open session in public. Now we're going to talk about a few exceptions for school districts, except for ministerial actions that the administration takes care of for you. Most important one is the middle one, deliberation. The receipt or exchange of information or opinion relating to a decision. Does not include informal or impromptu discussions of a general nature, which do not specifically relate to a matter then pending before the public agency. You as an individual board member are going to have a lot of times when you are receiving or exchanging information. You're going to have that with the public. You're going to have it with your fellow trustees. And there are some specific rules that we have to follow for those and things that you have to exercise care on. Just for example on that, the receipt or exchange of information should be in an open setting between you as board members. You may have the receipt or exchange of information from the public. When you get that information, as we go down the line in the years we come, we're going to talk about when you have to stop individuals from talking because of what you talked about in the Code of Ethics of having to sit as a hearing panel. But you as a board, when you're making decisions and you're voting on things and you're basing them upon the receipt of information that you've received from members of the public, have an obligation to disclose that. And the reason being is all board members are supposed to be making decisions on the same basis of operative fact. So if you have a member of the public that comes and talks to you about their opinion or their decision about something that they want you to know about, and that's a matter pending before the public agency, you as a board, for a decision, you're going to disclose that when you vote. And typically that's done from the practical standpoint as, you know, I spoke to individual X and this is what they told me and I'm going to use that information as part of my vote. And you'll hear a lot from your patrons, as you should. But those types of things have to be disclosed. Another important definition is meeting. And the meeting is the convening of a governing body to make a decision or to deliberate towards a decision. In the context of open meeting, obviously you here now are sitting at a meeting. You will have regular meetings, you will have special meetings, you will have workshops, you may have retreats. When an Attorney General's office is looking at the definition of meeting in the context of a violation of the open meeting statute, they are looking for situations where a board or members of the board are engaging in discussion or deliberation outside the context of an official noticed board meeting. And that can be done if 3 of you are sitting together having coffee. It can be done electronically. And it can be done in a manner called a daisy chain. And a daisy chain comes out of a California case where trustee A talks to trustee B, then talks to trustee C, and you're engaging in effectively what you should not be doing individually, one at a time. And all of that goes back to that standard definition or the principle of open meeting law that you're supposed to be formulating that public policy and open in front of the people here in the room tonight. And that's not happening when you're daisy chaining or when you're engaging in a meeting outside of a formal setting. The third slide that we provide you today is just the requirement in Idaho Code 74203 that you engage in matters in public. So except as provided below, all meetings of governing bodies shall be open to the public, and all persons shall be permitted to attend any meeting except as otherwise provided in this act. And no decision of a body shall be made in secret ballot. What does that mean in the context of actual application versus statute? That was cleared up a good bit in this past year when we had a lot of open meeting allegations all around the state with school districts. And the way the different prosecutors' offices were reading this was, you need to have your board meeting open to the public, and it said, shall be permitted to attend except as otherwise provided in this act. The way the prosecutors read that was, otherwise provided in this act also includes your specific rules. So if you have a physical limitation on the number of people who can be physically present in this room, that is under your rules. We had school districts who would not let individuals attend without masks or without social distancing, and prosecutors indicated that that was your rule, so that fell within these guidelines. Now, no decision shall be made by secret ballot. Yes, we've had roll calls, we've had open votes. You as a school district do have a few specific instances where you do get to vote in private, and we'll talk about those as we come to that. Now also your board meetings have to be held in a place where the public can access them. So we are not in a place where it is discrimination based on race, creed, color, sex, age, national origin. I would add to that disability so that it is accessible for all members of the public to attend. Tonight we are using telecommunications. So that's the perfect example of the next slide, that meetings may be conducted in that manner. Whether it's telephone, video conferencing. I had a school district numerous years ago who had a long-haul trucker who was a board member, and he would show up at the board meeting via iPad from a different city every single month, in a different place, and it worked out wonderful. But as you saw tonight when we lost Trustee Azuno, they immediately got her back on. And the reason being is that when you're having a meeting via telecommunications, everybody needs to be able to hear that individual, and that individual needs to be able to hear you. So that's when she was lost, we had to get her back on. You do have a quorum without her if she were to be permanently lost, but that would be noted in the minutes. If she was one of 3 attending tonight, the meeting would have to stop until we are able to get her back on. And meetings that are held via electronic or telecommunications methods only require one member of the board to be here, or your chief executive officer. So if, for say, have everybody out on a vacation or everybody out on a trip or somebody's ill, it would just require your chief administrative officer or one member of the board to be here. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about executive session. We amended for one tonight, so you'll get your first experience of an executive session tonight with the amendment. Those are closed to the public. It is up to the board to decide who attends those. Oftentimes it's addressed in policy. You need to have a clerk in there more often than not because they're keeping track of things and keeping you on topic. The individuals who are typically invited to attend are the individuals who have a need to know. What is typically addressed in those sessions are very confidential issues, be they student issues, personnel issues, litigation issues. So that is why the attendees are limited. Idaho Code 74-206 gives you the examples of when executive session occurs. They're very limited, and the courts construe them narrowly. So they don't read it as a broad standard. It's limited to the language. And the next piece of paper you have in front of you is an example of what an executive session motion would look like. And what that is it identifies the motion and then all the various things that it could be in a school district setting. So if you are going to do a student hearing, it would be, I hereby move that the Board of Trustees proceed to executive session to discuss matters allowed by Idaho Code, excuse me, that's 74-206, not 67. They recodified this a few years ago, and that number's still in my head. To consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining of, or to hear complaints or charges against a public school student under sub B. But those are A, B, C, D, E, F, I, and J are the ones that relate to school districts. There are other subparts, obviously, because we jumped from F to J, I, that relate to other entities. So probation or parole boards, things along those lines. These are the ones that specifically relate to school districts. Now, Idaho Code requires you to do a roll call vote as to who is voting to go into executive session, and 2/3 vote is necessary to enter into executive session. There is one exception to that, and that is if you happen to be down a number of board members. And what I mean by that is not that they're absent, but you literally have seat vacancies. So if you have seat vacancies, we may be able to work around that 2/3 vote necessary. The reasons to go into executive session need to be in the agenda, which you saw tonight with the amendment. It needs to be in the motion, and it also needs to be in the minutes. Now, if you look at those reasons on the subsections A through J, there are things that are confidential things. So hiring an employee where the respective qualities are to be evaluated in order to fill a particular vacancy or need. It's a specific hiring where you're talking about the background history, evaluation of that employee. It's not a general discussion about personnel. That has to be an open session. Subsection B, that is the one that is seen most often. That is when you are dealing with personnel disciplinary matters, student disciplinary matters. Clearly those are confidential. They're confidential by both Idaho law and federal law for students, so that's why they have to be in executive session. Conducting deliberations regarding property acquisition, considering records exempt from disclosure. Well, if they're exempt from disclosure, they're going to be confidential records. So those, again, are something that we talk about behind closed doors. J is a unique one for school districts to consider labor contract matters authorized under section 74-206A. So if you are in negotiations with your teachers association, this subsection in conjunction with 74-206A allows the board to talk about negotiations, what you can afford, what you would like to propose, what the counteroffers were that came back, how you're going to respond back to those. So all of that can be done in executive session. Obviously, if it was done in open session, similar to the acquisition of real property, you sort of let the cat out of the bag, so it defeats the purpose of it. But as you see on that, it then covers what the rest of that motion looks like and how that's done. Now, I indicated that executive session has some special rules for school districts, and there are special times where a school district's rules are different. So if you are reading the Blue Attorney General manual, it's going to tell you you can never take a vote in executive session. And that is true in accordance with the open meeting law. There is nothing in Idaho Code 74-200s that addresses anything other than you cannot take a vote in executive session. However, there are 3 sections in the Education Code that have been put in the education code separate from the open meeting law code that do allow a school board to take final action or to vote in executive session. And the first two are similarly related, is to put a Category 3 teacher on probation. The statute says you may vote on that in executive session. Same with renewable contract teacher, you may do that. And that's found in Idaho Code 33514 and 515. Same process, just different categories of teachers. A Category 3 teacher is somebody who has been with your district for 3 continuous school years, or comes to you from another district with renewable status and the district chose to put them on a Category 3 instead of a renewable. The renewable contract teacher is somebody in their 4th consecutive year of employment with your district, or somebody who came to you with a renewable contract that the district chose to give a renewable contract to. So those decisions can be made in executive session for the confidentiality of the employee. The last one is the newest one, and that's the expulsion of a student. We used to find it pretty strange that you could put a teacher on probation and protect their privacy rights in executive session, but you were kicking a kid out of school and the public figured it out because that final action had to be taken in open session. So what would happen is the board would hold the hearing in executive session and hear all about the reasons for expulsion and the family's explanation of why the student shouldn't be expelled, and then you came out in open session and made the motion. And while you did not use the student's name, everybody knew what was going on. So about 2 years ago, or in the last year maybe it was, the legislature changed that. The statute itself is messy. In one place it says may, and in another place it says shall. Shall trumps may, so we shall put a student through an expulsion, and you can make that final decision in executive session. So those are things that are different to schools that you will not see in that blue handbook and are probably inconsistent with what's in that blue handbook because it's written for all governmental entities. There's 2 other things that I wanted to just talk with you about. You'll have a slide that looks like this, the 3 columns, and it's the difference about a public meeting, a public hearing, and a public forum. Now, all 3 of those are going to be official activities of the district, and all 3 are going to involve open meeting law. But all 3 are handled differently. And let me explain that. Right now, we're in a public board meeting. You have to follow the open meeting law. It's a meeting of the board held in public. So it's you holding a meeting in front of the community. It's not you engaging and interacting with the community. That would be a public hearing or a public forum. There are 2 specific statutory times when you have to hold a public hearing. One is when you approve your budget. There is a budget hearing process, and that is a time when there is more interaction between, the board and the community. They get a chance to give you their input and their thoughts about the budget. Another time that is required by statute is if you are increasing fees by 5% or more. And this applies to all governmental agencies. That's why it's in Idaho Code 63, 1311, and 1311A. That's a more interactive process. That's more of the community coming and talking to you. A public forum may be something that you as a board choose to hold on a subject matter that you know is going to have a lot of input and is going to have a lot of impact on your community. I see that occur with, the one I see most often is boundary changes or zone changes. Letting the community come in, talking about it, you as a board sit and listen to it, or you may choose to do it as an administrative process that reports back. So that's the difference between the 3. There are different rules for each of those. And in the open meeting context, it's important because you need to decide, and you don't have a policy on this. I talked to Dr. Bub about this today. Your public input, when you take public input from your community, your policies have a standard identification of what your board meeting should look like. It does not have public input in it. You also do not have a public input policy itself, where you as a board have decided what kind of input you want to receive. It's something we'll be exploring in the next few months. There's nothing in the Idaho Code that requires you to take public input. That doesn't mean it's not necessarily a good idea. going back to that fundamental tenet of doing the work of the public in the open. There are two types of policies that we're going to have to talk about. One is a wide open policy, and the other is a more narrow policy or more tailored policy. A wide open policy allows a member of the public to come in during your section of your board meeting when you have public input, and they can talk about anything they want. Mind you, there are some constraints on that. They cannot talk about individual student or individual personnel matters that should be an executive session, but they can talk about matters that are not on your agenda. The other type is a policy that is strictly tailored to your agenda. I will tell you from nearly 30 years of doing it, that tailored one keeps boards out of trouble because it keeps you out of open meeting problems. If you have individuals coming for a fully open concept, it's not on the agenda, the public doesn't know it's going to be talked about, and if anything starts going back and forth, we have open meeting violations because you're engaging in deliberation during an open meeting on a matter that was not on the agenda. So my preference is to tailor it, have policies, have procedures, and know what you're going to do with that so that your community knows and your community is educated and you stay clean of open meeting. Now, when you're doing a public hearing or a public forum, that's less of a concern because the forum or the hearing is specifically tailored to an individual issue. So we are having a board budget hearing. That's all anybody's going to talk about. So they have to stick to that agenda item. Similarly, with a public forum, say you're going to have a forum with regard to school zone changes. Well, that's what it's about. So that's what people are going to talk about. So that's something that we're going to have to explore in the coming months because it's an area that isn't addressed in your policies. The last thing was just some practical open meeting considerations outside of the meeting setting. Don't do outside of a meeting what's to be done in the meeting. It goes back to that first slide. We talked about daisy chaining. Deliberating, deciding, and actually meeting outside of the meeting setting is something that will run afoul. It's something we've dealt with a lot in the past year all over the state. We already talked about disclosure regarding the basis for decision making. So if you get input from your community members, disclosing that you're using that for decision making. Reply all. If I could remove that from all of your computers right now, I would do it. The number one violation that we always have across the state are board members who receive an email from the clerk or from the superintendent, say he sends out a weekly newsletter or something, and you hit reply all and you start talking about something in there. Oftentimes I will see clerks or superintendents, they'll BCC all the board members, and you're wondering, why am I being BCC'd? Because you can't reply all. It won't go back to all the board members. But that's a very common area where we are engaging in discussion and deliberation outside of a meeting context. It's an open meeting violation. It's also one that's extremely easy for the prosecutor to prove because we've got an email train. Information needs to be shared through official channels, not through board members. We talked about that daisy chain issue. And public education. When I told you that, yes, you have to come in and talk, disclose the basis of your vote if you're using that information, make sure as a good common practice that when a member of the public is telling you, this is how I feel about this issue and this is why, that you disclose to them, I'm going to have to share this information. Sometimes they'll stop and say, never mind, I don't want to talk about it because they don't want their name out in public. That's fine. They can stop and we move on. But that was a 101 as fast as we could tonight. Once you have the chance to read the blue books, let's schedule something and we can work our way through that blue book and some examples of different things from subcommittees to different examples of things to avoid and things that you can do.
Thank you, Ms. White. And that was a lot to digest.
Yes, it was.
I'm sure. And there'll be ample time for questions, but I do at least want to offer it up if there's some pressing question that you have right now for clarification. I'll open the floor for that. Trustee Frazier.
I do have one. I'm interested in the wide open meeting option. I just feel pretty strongly that the public should get an opportunity to speak pretty openly. Can you just real briefly go over again what the stipulation would be with that if we were going to consider that as an option?
Certainly. If you were to consider the wide open public input, there's a few things that have to be done. I know you'd have sign-in sheets in the back where the individual would identify who they are and the subject matter that they want to talk about. The reason that that has to be done is so that if it is a specific student matter or specific personnel matter or something that belongs in executive session, that can be weeded out and dealt with separately. A critical input for wide open is that you as a board have to just sit there and not say anything back. That's an education piece. It can be difficult. I have no problem with a board member saying, Dr. Bub, can you please follow up with that patron about that issue? That's fine, because you're not discussing the subject matter. Once you engage in that back and forth, you are entering into a discussion about a matter that's not on the agenda. That's the most important part, and making sure that your public understands. I'm not sitting here like a stump because I don't have anything to say. It's because I can't and I don't want to run afoul. Doesn't mean it won't come up at another time. Doesn't mean that it's not something. I believe at the end of your agenda, there's future agenda items. A trustee could bring up and say, hey, let's talk about this issue at a future meeting. That's the biggest issue. Education and staying within that tight, keeping it without response. You're welcome.
Any other? Trustee Johnson.
Yeah, Ms. White, I would like to see if you can walk us through a scenario and just kind of give us some advice on how to handle this, because I think one of the things that's come up more recently is, we all hold nonpartisan positions, and we are getting approached by political parties. And so can you walk us through kind of how a board member should handle those interactions, especially due to open meeting law?
Right. Well, I would first start off with, you read your code of ethics, and there is the one section about not giving your vote over to anybody. If you are basing your vote upon something that you, from another patron or another individual shared with you about the subject matter that's up for vote, you have to disclose that. Whether it's an individual, whether it's the Teachers Association, whether it's a political party or an interest group, that would need to be disclosed. I'll do an aside on that as well. Going from open meeting to public records, all of those communications, whether it's on your school email, your home email, your text, those are all open for public records requests. And I'm sure the tech people will be talking at some point in time about the preservation of public records. So that's the other area where that can become an issue in both public records that slides into open meeting. Because if you are receiving all of this information and you're not disclosing, it's an open meeting violation that can be proven by the public records. But just disclose. Provide that information.
Trustee Ozuna, did you have any questions?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, Ms. White, I do have one, and it's kind of regarding the executive session and identifying who's invited. Is it necessary when we go into that to, on the record, identify who will be in the executive session?
It is not necessary to identify on the record who has been invited in, but it will be in the minutes of who was present.
Perfect.
Now, with regard to those minutes, if we are having a student hearing or a personnel hearing, we may not necessarily identify the specific name of student by name, parent by name. It might just be student X, parents of student X, employee Y, something along those lines, some identifier where your official records will have that information, but the minutes do not need to specifically identify who that is. It defeats the purpose of it being confidential in an executive session.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you. Good evening.
The next item up is item number B under discussion, and that'll be the revised policy 502.6, which regards interviews and searches, and it's the third reading. And Director Stain. Oh,
Chair Kofel, are we going to talk about the public participation at board meetings handbook on the agenda? I thought we were just doing the open meeting law first.
my bad. As we were talking about it, I thought we looped it in. So that is my bad. Thank you for the catch. Ms. White, are you prepared right now to talk about the public participation at board meetings?
I think that was the last sheet of that packet.
About the three different the 3 different types of meetings and, okay.
I'm sorry, Chair Kofel, I thought there was also board discuss, so we had open meeting law questions, but then I thought we were going to have board discussion on this public participation to give feedback so we could get the policy rounded out. That was the original intent.
Do we have, I know in the agenda, there was some language around public participation at the meetings. Can we talk about that and see if there's any I know there's not a decision on this, it's discussion
Certainly.
tonight.
Mr. Chairman, it is identified as a discussion item, so you as a board can certainly engage in some discussion about public participation at board meetings, and it will give me some direction, because obviously you're not making a decision tonight, but it will give me some direction in commencing the process with your policy committee of drafting that.
Okay. With that, each of us have the handbook that was approved at our last meeting, and then there is a breakout on the particular public participation at board meetings. So I would open that up for the board to discuss, if there's any particular questions, so we can refine that and perhaps make a decision on that at the next meeting.
Mr. Chair, I want to make sure we, because we're starting with 2 new board members and we're starting kind of mid-cycle in this, I want to make sure we put the history in this. So the prior board had a pretty hefty discussion about this. We didn't know what all the rules were around public hearing, public forum, public meeting, or board meeting. And so that was the reason, at that time, that was the reason that that board decided to hold this policy, not because that board or anybody on that board felt like public participation wasn't needed in a board meeting. And I want to make that very clear on the record so that that is not misinformation that's out there. So, and I think I personally feel like I've had some pretty good input, so I'd like to see what our other board members say and then see if we can come to alignment on some things.
Trustee Frazier.
Right, like I asked just a moment ago, Chairman, sorry. I would honestly like to see a wide open meeting. I would like patrons to be able to come and bring any concern to the board. Having had that experience about 4 years ago when we had an issue that as parents we wanted to bring forward, it was quite an issue to get that on the agenda. It took quite a bit of time, and once we brought it, actually Trustee Azuna was one of them that was very helpful in getting things rectified, but as she told me at that time, they just had no idea what was going on, and the emails and whatnot we were sending, we weren't getting through. So I do think it's important that patrons have an opportunity to bring their concerns. And I understand that we may need to set some time limits maybe to a meeting, I don't know, 30 minutes or I don't know, whatever everybody decided was appropriate. And then, of course, time limits probably to speaking as well, just in the interest of giving individuals the opportunity to bring up different issues. But that would be my thought.
And if I might, Mr. Chairman, if I have you right, Trustee Frazier, your group brought something, you have a policy that allows members of the public to ask for something to be put on the agenda. Was that the manner in which you guys did that?
Yeah, we had to get on the agenda in order to be heard. But yeah, we needed the board's help with something.
Okay.
Trustee Redford.
Yeah, I'm full agreement with Lori, or Trustee Frazier. I've actually been thinking a lot about this, and I would love to see more just wide open public comment, and I think these 2 parameters would be really easy to follow. Sign in with your subject matter and no questions or replies from the board. I think that's what the public wants. They want a listening ear, a sounding board, and I think that would be really easy to accommodate and would be a welcome addition.
Trustee Azuna, do you have any comments or questions?
Sure. I agree, and I think that it's important for us to listen to our community members. I also think that it's very important to go through the appropriate channels, and before something comes to the board, it should go through the school and the regional directors and up to the superintendent before it comes to the board's attention. So I think I would encourage us to consider what that balance is. I would prefer not to just have an open meeting where people can come to the board meetings. I think that could get us into some problems as Ms. White talked about.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask a clarifying question for Trustee Azuna. Is she seeking to have, I guess in the sign-up sheet, an individual indicate whether or not they've worked through the chain of command or brought the issue up to administration? Is that where she was headed with that idea?
Trustee Azuna, did you hear Ms. White?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, my preference would be, if there's an issue that needs to come in front of the board, that it works through, kind of like our grievance policy, that it works through all of the steps before it comes to the board. But certainly for items that are discussion items on our agenda, I do want to hear from the public.
Trustee Johnson.
I have a couple thoughts. I actually think we should outline all three of those options in our policy so we can use them appropriately. Because I'd like to actually sometimes ask some questions of patrons on a topic when they're testifying in front of the board, and we haven't been able to do that in the past, so I like the option of having that type of forum, I guess, would be where that's the potential. So I'd like to have all three options in the protocols. From a board meeting standpoint, I just don't want to be here till midnight, so I'd like to have a time limit in our board meeting public hearing testimony. And then because of that, I guess what I would ask is that we prioritize items that are on the agenda in the public testimony, because we're going to be making decisions on them that night.
Any other questions or comments from the trustees? Okay. I'll have a couple comments, and this was something that I brought up during our last workshop, and I will say it was widely supported by the board, and we just wanted to make sure we're doing it correctly. I fully support and want our public to have the opportunity, as you said so nicely, that really we're doing the people's business. So we want their input. We're providing some avenues for that now, and this would be one more avenue, which is fantastic because different people use different avenues. My thought is I want as many people as possible to be able to speak, but I share Trustee Johnson's feeling that we also need to be respectful and considerate of a time frame. And if we could accomplish having folks be able to come up and speak on any issue that they find important to the board and be able to accomplish that in a reasonable time frame, then I'm supportive of that. If it was something that became too problematic to be able to manage the board meeting in an efficient time, then I definitely want to prioritize the ability to come up and speak on items that are on the agenda that we theoretically we may be making a decision on. So I would share Trustee Johnson's thought that I'd love to see outlined each of those two options and the parameters around it. And it may be something that we could use perhaps interchangeably, or at least if we tried one option and we found that it was becoming a bit too difficult to manage time-wise and have everybody speak, then we know what the rules are the other way around.
Okay. Clarifying question, if I might. I know that when board meetings went remote under the governor's executive order, the district started taking input in writing. Is that something that you would still want to do? Or
Chair Kofelt? I would say absolutely yes, and I'll tell you why. We had a number of participants who did not believe that they felt safe in the room for a number of reasons, whether it be that people weren't wearing masks or just purely by the nature of how people were acting in the room. And so I don't want to limit a person because they don't feel safe from giving us information.
okay. And were you comfortable with the manner in which that was done, provided in advance, it's public, et cetera?
So we have a copy of some up here, and I'm not comfortable with it. I've expressed this concern a number of times. The name of the participants is not on this list, so I don't actually know if this person is in the zone, is in our district, if their input, I don't even know if it's valid or not. So I would like to see the public comment actually have to list your zone or your school or whatever, how you relate to West Ada, and then who you are. So.
I would agree with Trustee Johnson on that one. Is folks that are testifying here in person do share their name, and where I found that helpful is there's many times when I get an email or I see a public comment that's given to us that's submitted through the district. You know, I'm not more responsive to people in my zone, but it's helpful to know who the individual is. You know, what zone, what school. Those things are helpful as I kind of work through issues and try to answer questions and things for our patrons. So I think that would be helpful also. I do like receiving the public comment because that gives folks really three ways. There might be more, but you know, they're emailing us, they're submitting it electronically, and then they have the opportunity to be here also. And I think the more opportunities we give, the better.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, the board procedures handbook that the prior board had been working on in its workshops, the page that's up in front of you with the public participation down to complaints and grievances is an area that you would like to have redrafted, in addition to addressing policies and protocols.
Chair Kofelt?
Yeah, Trustee Johnson.
Ms. White, the board didn't ever approve this
Oh,
section.
okay.
So it's never been approved. We actually approved the procedures manual without this because it didn't have enough information for the board to be able to approve it.
Okay.
And I think we also wanted to hear from where our new board members are at.
So this would be creating this page in this section to address what you as a board wants to put it up for approval. Okay.
Trustee Johnson.
Yeah, one other thing, and this is just a technical thing, but on these comments, I think people are limited in the number of characters they can send us, and that has caused some problems too, because then they send multiple comments with like a section of a paragraph at a time. So, if we could get our the technical side of this, that would help too. I don't know if that goes in the policy, but just from a understanding standpoint.
Okay. So you have a number of issues with the format, the name, the address, the amount of content. Okay.
Trustee Redford.
Yeah, I agree that we do need to have names and addresses so we know, who these people are, that they're real. I like the various ideas or the variety of the ways that we can do public comment. I don't want to restrict that in any way. So written, in person, email, and what was the other thing? Just the various ideas Trustee Johnson mentioned of how to give public comment in the meetings. I'm open, and I think those are great options.
Trustee Frazier.
I agree with Trustee Johnson said about making sure that individuals that come to speak that concern the agenda, that we definitely get an opportunity to hear those. I think that's an excellent point. I don't know if it's possible to put in the opportunity for patrons, and I know I've seen this in past meetings where I've spoke, where people have had the ability to say, I kind of stipulate to what's been said. I don't need to stand up at this time. I feel like my views have been expressed adequately. Maybe there's a way to, I don't know.
Agree without repetition.
Right, and give a little more time for different issues to be brought up, but I do think it's important we still have the ability for a different viewpoint, a different concern to be brought up. I also agree that the public written comment does need to have, sorry, I can't see without my glasses, does need to have names and just like you do in person, have addresses and kind of own their comment. I agree completely.
And I think that addition would be consistent with the open meeting that we talked about. If you're all having to disclose what you're deciding on and who you talk to, it should be in that format as well.
Trustee Ozuna, I don't want to forget about you out there, so I want to give you the opportunity if you have any follow-up questions or concerns.
Oh, thank you. I do not.
If I'm kind of summarizing maybe what we've heard here, just to make sure is, since this document really isn't an adopted piece of the manual anyways, it really would be a reworking of the draft. I think from what I heard, we'd like to see maybe the protocol for both versus a wide open meeting or a meeting that you speak to just agenda items. I think the complaints, at least in grievances part, I think that's pretty clear. I don't see any changes that would need to be made there. The other piece I think would be important, Ms. White, and I think it's probably something that as a chair I would want to read at each session is really what the parameters will be for that session. As an example, if we're doing a wide open meeting, I think we need to read how the process is done, that there will be no interaction from the board because of a potential open meeting violation, and that just clarifying so when folks get up, they kind of know what the rules of the road are as they come up to the podium. Yeah. Trustee Johnson?
Chair Kofelt, yeah, I just want to clarify, when I said the different types, I think the wide open and the other option were in this public board meeting section, and I appreciate and agree with the options. I also think we need the options for public forum and public hearing as well as the public board meeting, because it would have been valuable to be able to have public forum on school boundaries or COVID protocols or some of that, and we just didn't have that mechanism in the past. Well, we didn't know we had it if we had it, so I want to just clarify that kind of what I was recommending, so to see if you guys are on the same page.
We made that as clear as mud.
I think I have a
Okay.
good direction to where we're headed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next item is Mr. Stans. We kind of fooled you last time and made you sit back down, but so this will be the third reading of policy 5026, which is regarding interviews and searches. So you have the floor, sir.
Well, good evening, Mr. Chairman and trustees and Dr. Bubb. Yes, this is the third reading. We had one correction from our last meeting, and so I'll just stand for any questions that you might have.
Just for ease of assessing the one change, especially for our new trustees that may have not had a chance to kind of go back on all the different changes that we made, can you identify that one change?
Yeah, it was line 26. It was the word there instead of, line 27. So it said, including the personal effects left there by students, T-H-E-R-E, it had T-H-E-I-R previously.
Any questions for Mr. Stans regarding this document, this policy? Trustee Redford, I'm sorry.
Just a quick comment. Thank you for making that change. It's a pet peeve of mine. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Ozuna.
No comment.
Okay. Okay, seeing no other comments, thank you very much for your hard work on this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And next item is just our West Ada Policy Review Committee with trustees. So, Mr. Heller.
Good evening, Chairman Kofelt, trustees, Dr. Bubb. As identified in the Board Procedures Handbook, the board needs to appoint 2 members of the board to serve on the District Policy Review Committee. This committee engages in a review of our existing policies to make recommendations for amendments to policies, recommend adoption of new policies when needed, and recommend elimination of policies that are no longer relevant. The 2 board members that are identified tonight for service would join myself, our Chief Academic Officer, Chief Operations Officer, Chief Human Resources Officer, and General Counsel in meeting at least once per month on the first Thursday of each month. It is likely that the work of the Policy Review Committee will require more than that one meeting per month. During the first meeting of this new committee this year, we will make some decisions on the scope and focus of the work for the year. As you heard earlier, we likely probably are going to need to spend some time in the 200 section of our policy, which is the Board of Trustees section of our policy manual. District admin has also identified some individual policies that we will need to review. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Trustees, any questions? Trustee Johnson.
Comment and a question. First, I want to kind of give the history of how this came about. A number of years ago, Trustee Newhoff at the time recognized when he first started that the district policy manual was lacking in a regular process for reviewing policies. And so they started down a journey of reviewing all of the policies. Particularly, there are some that are older than I am in that policy manual still today. And so they started on that process. COVID kind of disrupted that process, and we missed out for about, 9 or 10 months. And in that time frame, there was a real kind of it did not have any trustees on the review process. It was just when the policies came to the board. And we started seeing some disjointedness in just how many times the reiterations were coming up. We also recognized that we were seeing some policies multiple times, which we may have to have, and some policies we still weren't seeing. And so I think that was the reason behind kind of outlining, creating this committee, which we talked about in a strategic session this summer, and getting this all in front of the board. So I just wanted to put that history out there. The question I have is, because we're going to make a motion later on, is I'd like to hear from my fellow trustees who would like to be involved in this.
You're not being committed at this point, but yeah, it sounds like Trustee Johnson would like to know if there's any of our trustees that would like to just throw their name out as interest in this. Trustee Redford.
Yeah, I'd be interested in doing this. There's nothing, you know, quite as juicy as policy. No, I'm kidding. It's important. I know it's the kind of the quiet behind the scenes work, but policy is you know, kind of the backbone of the district. So I'd be more than happy to participate in that.
Trustee Ozuna, don't want to leave you out there. Any interest in participating in this, or any questions?
Mr. Heller, what do you anticipate the time will be in this process?
Time commitment? Trustee Ozuna, I think we'll have our one meeting per month. It'll be a regular scheduled meeting, and then likely, I wouldn't be surprised if depending on how many policies we're trying to work on in a given month, that we may have at least one additional meeting per month. So that would be my guess, is that we're going to probably spend at least 2 meetings a month. So we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 4 hours per month, probably. And then once we know which trustees are on the meeting and their time schedule, we will obviously try to work around the trustees' work schedules to make that happen.
Mr. Heller, you having participated in this past year with some of the other trustees, are you envisioning that those meetings would not necessarily have to be in person? They would be done by Zoom like we did?
Correct. I think we've actually found that we're pretty efficient by running those remotely, so that would likely be the way we would do that.
Something for the trustees to consider is, when we move into the action part of this item, is not only will we be identifying the 2 board members, but making sure that you're comfortable with the language on this also. Any other questions for Mr. Heller or comments? Trustee Frazier.
What time of day is this meeting normally held?
Trustee Frazier, last year we really worked around the 2 trustees and making sure that it worked with their work schedule. So it could happen during the school day, during our work day, but also I think most of the time we ended up doing them after hours, so sometime in the 4:30 to 6 p.m. range, in order to work around work schedules and family schedules for the trustees.
I'm happy to help with this if that's something that needs done. It sounds like we need 2 trustees to participate, so if work schedules and whatnot are conflicting for other trustees, I'm happy to help.
Trustee Johnson, is this something you'd be interested in participating in?
Chair Kofelt, I actually was going to nominate Trustee Ozuna for experience and Trustee Redford, but I wanted to hear if Trustee Redford was interested first, so that was the reason for my question. So I would push it that way if I were going to go someplace.
Trustee Redford.
I was actually thinking of Trustee Ozuna as well, just because she's been on the board the longest. She has the most experience, so yeah.
Trustee Ozuna, your name's been thrown out there a couple times. Is that something you'd be willing to entertain when we move into the action portion?
I would be willing to entertain that, especially with Mr. Heller's flexibility with the timing of those meetings.
Okay, and I do stand corrected on this. This policy has already been existed. I saw the red and I thought maybe there was a change to it, but it is not. So the policy is already in existence on the development of the committee. Okay, seeing no other questions on this, we can move into our action item portion. portion of the agenda. And first up is entertain a motion regarding policy 502.6 on interviews and searches. Trustee Frazier.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the revised policy 502.6, interviews and searches, as it's been submitted.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Trustee Johnson has a second. Right. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Any opposed? Okay. Chair votes aye. Motion passes 5-0. Next item is the appointment of West Ada Policy Review Committee trustees. So if I heard the discussion correctly, we have two of our trustees that are willing to, but we'll start and we can make this motion on both of them at the same time if you'd like.
Chair Kofelt,
Trustee Johnson.
I would move that Trustee Ozuna and Trustee Redford be the two trustees appointed to the Board Policy Committee for the 2022 board year.
Okay, we have a motion to approve Trustee Ozuna and Trustee Redford to the 2022 Policy Review Committee. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Trustee Frazier seconds. I'm sorry, any further discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, board votes aye. The chair votes aye, so motion passes 5-0. Next item up is our consent agenda. So I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair?
Trustee Johnson.
Yeah, I would move that we approve the consent agenda as recommended.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a second from Trustee Frazier. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Okay, board votes aye, motion passes 5-0. Next item is future agenda items. Is there anything from our trustees that you would like to see on future agendas?
Mr. Chair?
Trustee Johnson.
Yeah, I hate to actually make this request, but I'm going to make it because my inbox is full of people who are asking for us to have the discussion. We have some comments here. I have some comments in my inbox. We have 2 new board members, and we also have a variant that's coming at us. And we've had a number of, I got the benefit of having answered some questions around what's our absence rate look like for staff? What is our kind of plan if we can't keep our teachers in classrooms? And so I would ask at our next board meeting that we have a review of our COVID protocols and some update from the administration on what our plan is for managing through absences and in both staff and students to make sure that education is still continuing.
Okay, any other items from the trustees?
I don't think this is necessary next meeting, but we want to make sure that we get a review of our facilities plan. That cumbersome about what plan.
Trustee Ozuna, you kind of sounded like you went underwater there for a minute. So would you mind repeating what you'd like to see on a future agenda?
Oh, thank you. I don't think this is necessary for the next meeting, but I do want to make sure that we have a plan to talk about our long-term facilities plan, and then also what we're going to do to handle growth and our next bond.
I think I can interpret. Trustee Ozuna said maybe not the next meeting, but I would encourage the board to think about this, is having some facilities review on kind of where we're at on our student population, our facilities, and whether or not we can handle the growth that's coming at us with the future and what's been approved. And then there's a decision that I think this board probably needs to think about when we want to do it, and there's some timing to it. So I think Mr. Gillen's here, and he probably could help us with if we need to start to think about a bond, when do we need to run that and how, and what does it look like? So that facilities meeting would give us some good insight into our options. And then the third thing I guess I would say is I think we have some community partners that have been actively waiting for us to talk about this. So that's the only reason why I would encourage us to do it sooner rather than later.
Just a clarification on that, and Trustee Ozuna, the facilities discussion you're looking for is around needed facilities for growth, or is it around that and facility maintenance and things of that nature?
I think both. It's around growth and future needs, and then also what we're going to do with the plant at the end.
Okay, thank you.
Just projects on the horizon.
Okay. I like that teamwork. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, my phone.
Nope. Any other items? Trustee Redford.
Can I make a suggestion for a future spotlight? Not necessarily for the very next one, but before Christmas, I had the chance to pop into all of the schools in my zone and just say hi and meet people. And I stopped in at Macmillan, and Camille Peck just grabbed my arm and she took me into the community school and gave me an in-depth tour, and told me all about the amazing things that she's doing, and then the 2 other community schools as well. And I think that it would be really appropriate to spotlight them and the amazing work that they are doing.
Okay. Did you get that? Okay, fantastic. Great. Anything else before we move into our next area? Okay, so our next agenda item is to move into executive session. I will just emphasize that whoever does make the motion, we need to make sure that we read the Idaho code and the language following that as part of your motion. Trustee Johnson.
I would move that the board move into executive session per Idaho Code 74206-1B to consider the evaluation, dismissal, and disciplining of, or to hear complaint or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent or public school student.
Okay, we have a motion to move into executive session. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Trustee Frazier, and we'll do a roll call vote on this. Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Trustee Redford?
Aye.
Trustee Frazier?
Aye.
Trustee Ozuna?
Aye.
And board votes aye, so motion passes 5-0, and we will move into executive session. The mic. West Ada School Board is back from executive session at 8:07. And at this time, I would entertain any motions.
Do we have Trustee Ozuna on the phone?
That's a good question, and we do not.
Didn't realize that she. Sorry, I think she's on. I've got to go.
Hello.
Hi, Trustee Ozuna. Okay, sorry for that. I forgot to make sure you were included here. So West Ada School Board will be back in session. We'll be back from executive session at 8:08 with all trustees present, and I'll open the floor for any motions. Trustee Frazier.
All right, Chair, I make the motion to approve the personnel recommendation from administration for employee H to be put on paid administrative leave.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the personnel recommendation from administration for employee H to be put on paid administrative leave. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Johnson. All in favor, say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Motion passes 5-0. Okay, Madam Clerk, just wanted to make sure that we add the public comments to the official minutes.
Yes, they're added. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I believe that Trustee Frazier has taken the seat that is responsible for the adjournment motion.
I can do that. All right, Chair, I make the motion that we adjourn for the evening.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Motion passes 5-0. Meeting is adjourned.